Hey, check, check. Hey, hey, 1, 2. Hey, 1, 2. Hey, check, check. 1, 2. Hey, hey, 1, 2. Hey, 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 1, 2. Check, check. Hey, hey, 1, 2. Check 2. Hey, hey.
You guys ready? I'll tell them they were good to go.
One, two, check, one, two.
Are we testing? Yes. Hello, everybody. tell me when. Good? Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Sony 360 Reality Audio Panel. My name is Adam Weissler. I am a music reporter at the TV show Extra and moderate music events at the Grammy Museum, and I'm always thrilled to be here with Sony at NAMM. Thanks for coming out. We have a really amazing panel here of really, truly talented, some of the best in their field, if not the best in their field, to talk about all kinds of fun stuff today. So I'm going to let them start by introducing themselves one by one so you guys can hear where they come from and what they're all about, and then we'll take it from there.
Hello everyone, my name is Mert. I run a studio called The Record House. I'm one of the early adopters of immersive audio. Set up a Dolby Atmos room right before the pandemic actually, like 2020, and I've been doing like Atmos and Sony mixes for the past 3-4 years, whatever. It's been a while, so happy to be here.
Hey guys, my name is Les Camacho. I'm an independent producer. I work for Pink Floyd, Massive Attack, Fleetwood Mac. Just got into the whole immersive thing, been trying out the new Sony microphones and independent productions that I'm working on and having a ball.
Hi, I'm Maddie Harmon. I'm a mixer engineer based out of Nashville. I've been working with immersive audio for like the last 5 years. I started with Dolby Atmos. I worked for UMG for a while, doing Atmos stuff with them, back catalog, and now I am doing immersive audio on my own. And I've been able to work with Kesha, Steven Sanchez, Megadeth, and some other artists over the last couple of years, and it's been great, and I love it.
Hey everybody, I'm Charles Jenkins. Friends call me Chuck. Label head, artist, most known for gospel music. 18 number ones, over 300 million streams and views worldwide. I license music to both TV and film, tons of sync, and have recently been immersed in the immersive audio world, and I'm excited to be here.
What's up, everybody? My name is Mike Benj. I'm a drummer, music producer, mix engineer as well. I am currently working on an immersive mix for a record that you guys will probably hear a little bit later today. So stay tuned for that. And that's pretty much it for me.
Very cool. While you have the mic, Mike, let's start with you and talk about what initially attracted you to the world of audio. You're an artist yourself, obviously. You're a touring musician. You're great in the studio. What was the initial... I think we're good. The initial appeal for you, the initial excitement that got you into this world.
Well, so I graduated from Berklee College of Music. So based on my experience going there, based on my experience at Berklee, they kind of threw us into the water, per se. And my love for mixing came from seeing a lot of my friends do records. And as a young child growing up, hearing different records from like Macy Gray on the radio and certain songs that kind of had different progressions in them. And for me, I thought that it was unique to have songs that you could feel either immersively or through stereo mixes that kind of gave you a certain dynamic or dimension of like musicality. And it kind of fed into your spirituality or your listening attention of how you hear songs.
And the doctor, when listening to music as a young man, when did you know the expanse of that and what you can do? What excited you growing up?
You know, I mean, as a consumer, I mean, you know, you want to experience music. You don't want to just listen to music. You want to experience the music. And so I think, you know, growing up in a household where my uncle was a principal member of Earth, Wind, and Fire. And so I was exposed a lot to hearing what music should sound like and what it should actually be like. And you know, many other family members, you know, playing classic records and classic music. I mean, for me, as I evolved, being around amazing mixers and amazing engineers and amazing creatives, for me, it was a intrinsic evolution to want to experience music at its highest level.
Maddie? You're an artist yourself, and you're an engineer. Where did that come from in you? And someone you've been doing this immersive now for 5 years, you said, right? So this isn't the world's oldest technology. So what turned you on to it initially?
I started with immersive 5 years ago. When I was in college, I had an internship with an engineer, and he was primarily stereo mixing, and he just kind of worked his way into immersive, starting with Atmos. He took me to an Atmos room one time when I first started working with him and was just like, let me play you something I'm working on. Like, this is so cool. I really want you to hear this. And I remember just like sitting in that room and closing my eyes and just being like transported to another world. And at the end of that, I was like, you have to show me how to do this. Like, I want to learn how to do immersive. Like, this is so cool. And music for me has always been about like emotion and really like feeling something through the music. And immersive, especially like through that first experience when I first heard it. it like it just really made the experience of music more amazing, more immersive, and yeah.
Unless, hello, hello, there we go. Unless obviously you've worked with some amazing artists. Some of your initial experience. Talk about going from stereo to 360 and what that was like for you initially.
It was first of all, mixing wise, it was game changing, because now all these ideas you had in your head about how its song sounded in your head, you can actually put anywhere in the room. So that was one thing. As an engineer, you're able to move things around and put it in a perspective that you love or you want to hear, while still making the big, beautiful environment. As a producer and as an engineer tracking records that I'm going to mix, it gives me the ability where I'm able to mic things from different parts of the room, and then I have the choice whether I want to use it in an immersive environment. For example, tracking drums, miking a drummer from the rear, splitting the signal into clean and dirty, and then deciding whether you want the clean or dirty in the front or the back of the room, just to give it the vibe of actually listening to that drummer or that band in a live environment. So it's quite fun. It's just really fun to be able to do that. So yeah.
And Mert, the fun for you. Talk about your initial, when you first heard about this technology and your initial experience with it.
Yeah, I mean, I was really excited about it because growing up, like listening to records like Pink Floyd and everything, like even as Chuck was saying, as a consumer of music, the experience of music was really important to me to like be immersed in it, even in like a stereo format. And then when this technology came around, oh, I can actually like be in this room. It was really exciting to like mess around with it, and I definitely, had a lot of fun on a couple of the records that I mixed. Like the Saint Vincent record that I did was very psychedelic and very fun to do, like some unconventional things. And yeah, I had my fun with it. Yeah.
How difficult, how easy going in? What the initial time you're in the studio and you're trying to make this work? This is something that it's probably still a work in progress for a lot of you because the technology keeps changing and it's great. But talk about that initial few projects and when you're first getting your feet wet with all this stuff and just trying to experiment. If you can just each of you talk about what it's like, the initial experimentation. How trepidatious were you to start small, or did you go big right away?
I was also working on film scores and TV, so like dubbing stuff. So Atmos wasn't completely foreign to me. Like I knew the objects and stuff. The workflow for me was like translation to headphones and other speaker systems, because I think film is a bit easier to translate, and like music plays a background role in that. And when it's like the main event and you want to make it, sound good on different devices, I spent like quite a few months like figuring out, okay, how do I do it and how does that actually translate between devices on what I'm hearing on speakers to like headphones to earbuds and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that was the main experiment for me.
At the beginning, Les, what that was like for you when you first started working.
I went big right away. I was like, well, let me see. I'm the type of guy that like to get a system, whether it's a microphone or an outboard piece of gear, and I want to take it to a limit, try to break it, see what it does. I approached it the same way, and oddly enough, I didn't hate it. I actually enjoyed how big you can get as long as you keep perspective. One of the coolest things I found out was it's predominantly on drums. Usually we fight to keep everything face in face, everything nice and clean. In immersive, having things out of phase actually can help you, and it gives you certain dimensions that I found out was like, it opened up a new door. It's like, well, being out of phase on that particular overhead or that particular guitar, it's actually an asset now that I can use to pan to the rear speaker while keeping the front guitar up here and giving you that illusion of depth, like if you were listening to it at a club. And so that was one of the coolest things. I just went big right away, and it seemed to work. I didn't hate it. I loved it.
When I first started doing my own like immersive mixing projects, I was doing back catalog work, which meant that I had to take a whole bunch of like raw multi-tracks and remix them to sound like their original stereo mastered releases, which was really hard work. The biggest challenge for me there was to like maintain integrity of the original stereo mix in my immersive mixes. That's something that I still think is really difficult sometimes, especially when like I'm not there with the artists in the room getting to talk to them face to face. Like I wasn't there, things were being tracked, so on and so forth. But it's been a really great learning experience in like interpreting mixes and what people do in their mixes and how that those things make people feel, and taking those things in stereo that make you feel a certain way and then getting to play with it in immersive. Like I love what Les just said about drums. Like yeah, it's super important to have them like in phase in the stereo mix, but then you can get to like flip things out of phase and start moving things around in the immersive. And you can still you can do all those different crazy technical things, but you can make like the same kind of feeling with immersive, and that's been really cool.
How hard was it? It was rocket science. uh, for me, and shout out to my engineer Ryan and mixer and Kevin, both who have touched music of mine in immersive. I mean, I'm a consumer and I'm a creator, right? I'm an artist, and you all are the brainiacs that help us understand and help us to make it sound like we want it to sound. And I think, you know, experiencing it and being in the mixing sessions and being able to move the modules around all over the place to get the sound over your head, in front of you, behind you. Like for somebody like me, um, I needed a Tylenol after being in a session for hours on hours watching that. But I can say that the final result and hearing it once it's all finished is nothing like I'd never imagined or never could conceive before. And honestly, it's like going to a sports game and sitting in a suite or sitting on the floor. I don't want to sit in the regular stands no more. After hearing immersive, I'm completely spoiled and super grateful for the product.
I got to piggyback off of Big Bro. So for me, immersive, it's interesting because I only originally thought immersive was available within movies. Usually you'll see a movie screen and it's it's 3D audio, so it moves from left to right, panning. And so for me, when I thought of immersive, I thought of only that scenario. Until I got into the studio with Kev, and I saw the technology that we have to be able to move the sounds around. And it's interesting because you can't really, well, as of now, you can't see sound. But through the technology we have, you have a way to visualize where the sound is and use those inputs that you're visualizing or outputs and move them in any direction and pan them. And so with that being done, it kind of gives you the ability to visualize and create what you wish you could see in music in a way that you can hear it. And so sometimes we have a record that we did, we have a vocal moving from right to left behind your head. Usually that doesn't happen unless you're watching a movie in a movie theater with surround sound speakers. But now Sony has the technology to do that, so it's very creative. But to answer your question, it was extremely difficult.
Yeah. But what's that like in real time? Because what you're saying, and I've seen the videos, and I've seen the sphere and the modules and things like that, and I've imagined it, and it just looks magical. When you're actually doing it, you talk about being hard and difficult, but what's it like that first time when you're moving something around, and you're hearing that? How special is that feeling, and how does that open up the world in terms of like you can't go back, like you said, it's gonna be something new from this point on?
Personally, it's incredible to me because I looked at music almost in a two-dimensional space where it wasn't like something physically, tangibly able to touch and move and maneuver. It's almost like just faders or just creating the product. So now you have the ability to you're kind of like putting yourself into the song in a sense, to where if you have a certain sound effect, like maybe a Foley or an effect sound, you can use that to kind of tell a story in a sense. Now the music is speaking to people in a different way where they can feel something differently instead of just hearing it audibly. You're feeling it as well as hearing it.
And I've watched you in church, and I've seen what you do, and I see the way the crowd reacts, and I've heard the gospel. Talk about that in terms of what we're talking about here in the 360, and recreating that experience, if you have. I'm sure you have, and what that's like, because that's special and unique unto itself.
You know, I think, you know, once we got done mixing, one of the things I said to Kevin, who's a rock star, um, is it's literally taking people from the audience and putting them on the stage, right? And so when you say immersive, for the old schoolers that remember surround sound, um, actually putting a person in the song, right? And so putting the headphones on and having the person actually feel the music on the inside of them. For me, I think that as I continue to create and as we're making new records, knowing that as this product goes to the world, it moves from people just enjoying the song to feeling the song on the inside of them and contingent upon the instrumentation. I mean, whether it's 808s or horns or to experience the live feeling of it while you're listening to it in the comfort of wherever you are, I think is insane.
And for you as well, you mentioned doing some like catalog stuff, but when you're actually working with artists, how different is that to have that input when you're just putting this together?
Yeah, I'm actually working with an artist right now. We're tracking a whole album to analog tape, and then we're going to be playing it in art galleries in immersive formats. And that whole experience has been so different than like mixing back catalog stuff. And they're both of those experiences have been great in different ways. But getting to like work with an artist on this level and I like immersive has changed the way that I'm tracking now. I went to AES a couple months ago, and Morten Lindberg was there to talk about like his Atmos array and like how he's doing immersive miking techniques. And getting to try that out in the studio has been really awesome, and it's completely changed my whole world. Not even just in mixing, but in tracking.
With the artists you've worked with, talk about their initial. Who was into this immediately? Who do you have to convince, or how does that work in terms of the artist? Because it's still relatively new. I'm sure not everyone's on board yet.
It's really new. It's really new, and a lot of guys are very skeptical about it. I can talk about one particular recent event, which is with an artist out of Nashville who sings for a band called Grisfolk, and he's got his own solo record coming out right now. His name is Adam Roth. Anyways, we did a song, and when I first got introduced to the 360 family, I used the song on headphones. I ended up mixing on headphones, and I loved what happened. And I sent him the track, and it literally blew his mind because he was able to listen to it on headphones and go, Jesus Christ, I feel like I'm sitting with the band in the middle of the stage, like he was saying. And that, as an engineer, gives you immediate validation about a system you're about to use, because now, yeah, we can sit here and be geeks about it and go, oh, yeah, I love what it's doing. But I think when the artist tells you, holy shit, I'm hearing it, and he's not BSing you. He's actually quite skeptical about it. And all of a sudden he listens to it and calls you back. He's like, that sounds pretty amazing. That's I think it's a good barometer of where the technology can go for both us engineers and also for the artists and the listeners, because it becomes friendlier and friendlier, and it makes it easier for us to interface and reach the crowd and let them know that, hey, you can actually feel like you're in the studio with that band. And there's many ways, I'm sure these guys have experienced it. You can approach the mix in 10 different ways. You can approach it where you want it to be an immersive thing, like you're listening to it out there, or you can mix it and make it sound like you're sitting with the band, or you can mix it and make it sound like you're in the venue, sitting in the middle of the venue, listening to the band. So it's up to you how you want to mix it and where you want to plan it. And I think that's great, because that opens up so many ideas and so many artistic endeavors that you can do now, that I think it's great. I think
Not that you weren't creative to begin with, all of you, but this makes your job much more creative as well, and you could work with the artists and that, and hear what they want, and it's the creativity there that makes it really special as well.
it really does. It's convincing the artist is the hardest thing. But yeah, once they hear it, they're sold. I haven't had anybody go, "Nah, I hate it." Every artist I've presented it to is like, more. And they've actually been wanting to know if we can track immersively. And it's like, okay. So I've been talking to these guys, see how we can make it happen. So yeah.
You have a cutting edge artist like St. Vincent you're working with. It's open to this kind of thing. How exciting is that? How much easier for you to kind of expand and be creative?
I mean, that record was a lot of fun to play around with, because again, I kind of went big, as you were saying. I didn't hold anything back, and being such a psychedelic, record, it allowed for that. And as you're saying, whenever the artist like comes in the studio and hears it, they're always like blown away. They actually like maybe didn't know about immersive when they first started, but like once they hear it, it's like, oh, I want to make arrangements for this. I can actually create like a synth line that goes around and does a drop, like whatever it is, like arrangement and composition wise, they get inspired to do certain things. So kind of like what we do on like the mixing side can like inspire the artists to do certain things on the back end, which is great. And I mean, it doesn't even have to be that bombastic. One of the simplest records that I mix is for this artist called Pratik Kuhad. He's like an Indian artist, like Atlantic signed him, and he did a bunch of like English songs and great songwriter. And the production on one track is like really simple acoustic guitars, organs, and background vocals type of thing. But like even that, once you're like in the song, whenever I play my mixes, people go like, "I love that," and it's like the simplest song ever. But like once you're like done nicely, it can be really impressive. Yeah. Which is most artists sometimes don't think about. They're like, well, I have this like acoustic track. Is immersive really worth it for that? And it actually is. It makes a difference. Yeah. Yeah.
And you mentioned that, and then as an artist yourself or working with other artists, have you been privy to that? Any other good stories of like, you know what, I can do this and things change. All of a sudden they're adding arrangements or you're adding arrangements or vocals, and it becomes a whole new process from day one. Share anything like that?
Hey, you want to share first?
This joint is hot.
Sounds like my mix,
Yo. This joint is hot. So there's a couple records I'm working on right now with a friend of mine and my boy Rox named Breezy, and she didn't know necessarily what a immersive mixing sounded like, and so at the time I just kind of was dabbling into it myself. And once we got the software and kind of set it up, it led to her background vocals being arranged differently because she could hear things in different sides of the songs now, so, or on different sides of the speakers. And so her creativity kind of expanded because the vocals that we were panning hard left or hard right or just center were now moving around, or they were moving around in certain parts of the song where maybe a bridge came and there was a vocal that was tucked somewhere that you couldn't hear it before because it was in stereo. But now that it's an immersive, you can hear it specifically in one side or the other side. So I think it gives you more creative options and allows you to kind of dig deep into like the diversification of how the music can sound.
Similar experience.
Well, I was gonna say when I was sitting in the session, and Ryan and who's my brother and a rock star, the music, there were certain things that maybe in a traditional mix that you wanted to experience more in the immersive mix. And as my brother just said, like certain elements, whether it's a string riff or a horn or something of the sort, wanting to pan it differently or move it differently, or you want to experience that behind you. I think the brilliance of this technology is you can create moments and experiences organically and intrinsically in different ways throughout the entire song. However you want people to experience, or sitting them inside the mix and saying, this moment I want them to experience have the horns in their face, or I want the bass behind them from the drums or from whatever the percussion is. And so for me, I think that as we have seen evolutions and iterations of sound, you know, every you can't park anywhere because all of the good parking spaces are for electric cars. I think this immersive thing, Sony is raising the bar to where soon everybody is going to be where this technology is evolving.
And similar experiences for you, or actually, since you mentioned software, any advice for the software people that may be thinking of picking this stuff up? Do you have any initial advice, or I wouldn't say warnings, but like you made it work. But just what that process is like for you, your workflow.
I would say if you're thinking about getting the software, you should just download it and start diving right into it. There's a very handy manual that comes with like the 360 Walk Mix Creator plugin. It's literally just in the manual, and that thing was like a lifesaver for me when I first began. So I came from like the Atmos side of things, and in like there was a really good breakdown of like how Atmos and 360 are similar. that has been really great for me. It's been an interesting learning experience to go from like the cube to the sphere kind of thing. And I feel like I'm still learning like every day when I get to use this software, and even like, you know, I still learning things with like stereo mixing every day. It'd be boring if I wasn't. But I would say if you're like if you're wanting to just get into this, like download it, start pecking around and just trying things. Like we're still in the wild west of all this software stuff. There's really no right and wrong yet, or I don't think there's ever really going to be. Like there kind of isn't for stereo mixing either. So just like start getting your feet wet now while immersive is still new, because I think it's going to be sticking around.
Les, is there ever a too much? You ever like, when do you know when to stop with this? Because it's so much fun. I wanted to ask all you guys this, because you can be creative and go on forever.
It's hard. It's hard to know when you want to stop because, like all these guys were saying, the creative doors are blown wide open. I'll give you a quick example. I'm producing a record right now, and had Steve Ferroni on the drums, tracked him, and then all of a sudden he's playing around on his drum kit, and it sounds like he's doing a loop. And I said, hey, you know what? And thank God I'm the producer on it. I said, can we record a loop to the drum beat you just lay down? And all I did was open up his kick drum mic, the overheads on the room mics, recorded that to a couple of channels, chopped it up, and then in the mix, what I ended up doing is I had Steve up front on the speakers, send the loop to the right side rear, and send the reverb to the left side rear, and all of a sudden, it was just massive, and kept everything on the subwoofer. So artistically and arrangement-wise, you're able to do so many things that you almost end up, these guys almost end up giving you enough rope to hang yourself if you're not careful. So you have to know when to stop, basically. You have to know when to stop yourself, in my opinion. Because creatively, you can just go anywhere. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know yet. I'll let you know. So we'll see.
Do you find that hard? How's that work for you in terms of having that creativity, but knowing when to stop, when to pull back, or is that still, every project's different, I'm sure?
I mean, you can go forever for sure. I just try to stop when I'm, I guess satisfied with it. Like, I typically like do my big brush strokes really fast and early on in a mix. Like, I listen to stereo, and if I'm not the producer, I'm doing like the up mix for it. I kind of like have my taste, sensibility, and like what I want to do with the song. I'll do those real quick. And then if I'm like, well, it's not really doing it for me, let me try something else. I might go down rabbit holes and whatever and experiment. But then, yeah, I think it's, you also get to a point where you kind of, know what you like and what you don't like. So I kind of like stay in that realm. Yeah, yeah.
What about when you're more creative, possibly, than the artist? And the artist is kind of a simple song. I'm sure you're able to turn it into something special. What's the fun in that, and taking something that maybe they haven't even thought of and all of a sudden changing it for them? What's that reaction like from the artist? You seem.
You want to take it? You want to go first? Okay, I'll go first. I recently did a single with an artist, and it was acoustic. And he had a lot of really cool ideas in the stereoscope where there was a lot of ambient instruments that were being used. And so when I started mixing it immersively for him, and he heard the playback come back to him, it really shocked him because he said it was so rich. And so, I mean, you can, it's just, you can go anywhere you want with this thing. And, being able to give an artist a different view of what he can do with the instrument he's playing, and tell him, well, we can have it here in the stereoscope, but now let's move that, like he was saying earlier, and put it on top of your head and hear that harmonium on the top of your head. It just opens up so many ideas for the artist to just get going. And it kind of gives you, it's hard to say, because I think eventually it's going to get to the point where creative ideas are going to clash. And that might be a problem in the studio. But as of now, it seems like everybody's playing nice.
That's nothing new on an artistic level, I would think.
No.
They hire you for a reason. They like what you do, but there's still kind of usually a nice clash at some point, right?
Yeah, and you don't want to take too much. When you're a producer, I was always taught as a producer to stay away from the music, stay out of its way, let it do its thing. You're not there to tell the artist how to play, you're there to guide. And so when you start coming up with these ideas because you're feeling them, you don't want to, in my opinion, you don't want to get ahead of the artist, because then you feel like you're taken away from their artistic endeavor. And so it's kind of a fine line and a kind of a dance we have to do, but it's fun so far. It's a lot of fun.
To have these tools in your tool chest and to have artists, this expands your demand, I would think, to these creative artists, these artists on the cutting edge that want to do something new. So I would think they'd be open to your ideas and that creativity, else they wouldn't be working with you to start.
For sure. I would even argue that some of the most creative mixes that I've gotten to do have been the ones that have been more simple. One of the blunders that I first started making when I was like starting out with immersive and 360 was that like I thought that being super creative was like moving tons of things around all the time, and that's not what it is. I would say that the mixes that have forced me to think outside of the box the most are the ones that are like simpler in arrangement, like some country songs or like songs that are like acousticy singer-songwritery. You really have to think about like how to fill the space creatively with like reverb returns and effects and things, rather than having like a really super fun like dancey EDM creative mix where you can naturally, more organically just move things around and have it feel okay. Yeah, the mixes that I've done that I really honestly feel have been like the most creative for me have been the simpler ones.
Anything to add to that?
Could you repeat the question?
Since I got you here, Mike, I wanted to ask you, being a live musician, someone who's out there playing live, how does that inform what you do in the studio? Is it nice to turn it off? Is it completely different, or does those skills, that environment inform what you do possibly in 360 or in the studio? Are you looking for something new, or are you looking to kind of shut that off and do something completely different?
That's a loaded question. So
And do something totally new when you step into a studio?
I would probably try to do something new because you kind of want to differentiate the two between live and in studio at times so that you don't do the same ideas over and over when you're playing live versus recording or mixing and mastering. For me, when I'm looking for what I'm looking for when I'm in the studio, it really depends on what we're going for and what the song deserves or needs. You kind of take yourself out of it and just do what's best for the record. But some of the things, let me put it like this: in terms of playing on records, those fundamentals are pretty much the same in the studio as well. You have to play the same as you play live. In terms of the mixing and or mastering portion of what you play on a record in the studio, it could be different based on how you want the song to sound and based on what the song is that you're producing. It's genre based. There's a whole bunch of factors that go into it.
In terms of the future of this, and as you're all on the cutting edge, you're all using this great Sony technology. In terms of what's next, how is a combination of frustrating combination with exciting as to who's being turned on to this? The listeners, some of the listeners are turned on to this. A lot of them aren't, obviously. It's all still new. How much do you want people to hear what you're doing when it's this special? Is that when you finish a project and things are out of your hands? What's that like?
Well, I want to tag what we were just talking about and answer that. And shout out to my brother Rodney East, who's one of the biggest, greatest producers of all time. My sister Rakita. So I was gonna say to the last thing we were saying, as an artist, that sitting in the session and being challenged on what's possible and what I could hear, I think it's profound that you guys are ahead of the curve and have a handle on this advanced technology to be able to expose us, guide us, introduce us, and keep us on the cutting edge of giving our audiences the greatest experience. So I think that's incredible, and I think being a person who has had Ryan or Kevin or Rodney even say, listen to check this out, I'm gonna move this here, I'm gonna move that there, or give it a chance. And as he said, you know, we may have a vision, right, of what we wanted to sound like in the end, but being open to the learning of it and growing in a way that will lead our listener to a greater experience. To answer the last question really fast, you know, I think whenever the listener, whenever anyone, I just sent some music to a big distributor today, and you're bearing your soul, right? So it's like, oh my God, as you start sending music, I sent one of your songs to somebody today. It's like, okay. And so I think with all of this amazing technology, the other side is some people don't have access to the headphones to even comprehend what this is yet, right? And so I think that's coming, but for the future of it, I think it's another iteration of the evolution.
Yeah. Scary and it's super fun when something gets released. The weird thing about immersive releases for me right now as a mixer is that there isn't really like a mastering phase that happens, and there always is that final check with like stereo mixes. So to have something like leave my hands or my studio and just go like straight to DSPs is kind of nerve wracking. Um, it's it's super fun that like I get to like make some of those mastering decisions in the end, but yeah, it can be kind of scary too. But I agree with what you said about people not really fully understanding like what they're listening to. That's another thing that's a little scary about it. But that's also just because, like I said earlier, we're still kind of in like the Wild West phases of immersive audio, and it's just one of those things that'll get better as time goes on. I think. Yeah.
For any of you, what's it like? How often do you listen to a record, maybe from your childhood or some of your favorite records growing up, knowing what you can do with that, maybe, and changing that into a surround thing or things that even a few years old that man, if I would have done that, here's what I can do. Is that a constant thing when you guys are listening to other tracks?
It's funny because I mean, when I first started doing these immersive mixes, yes, like I just had like a Bluetooth speaker in my kitchen that I would like listen in the morning. That obviously didn't do like immersive audio, and then whenever records came on, I would just like, oh, that would be fun to do something there or whatever. I'm not sure if I'm having those thoughts constantly anymore. I've been doing this for a while. I'm kind of like, just listening. But yeah, at the beginning, I was having a lot of inspiration of like, oh, let me try that with that. And also, just to answer your previous question about like the consumers and everything, I think right now, as Maddie said, this is the Wild West. I mean, and whenever you can hear mixes in like a great room with multiple speakers, it sounds amazing, and you don't have to convince anyone, the artist or the listener. The consumer devices need to catch up for the consumers to catch on. But to tag another Sony product, you guys should check out the VME software, which is like the virtual mixer environment that really puts you in that real room situation on headphones, and making that accessible to the public is just going to excite them more. Because I think this is the again the cutting edge. We're at a technology forum right now, and like the sphere at the Vegas, whatever. Like if you show the consumer like, oh, we can do this, and they're like, they go there and then realize it, they're obviously going to be blown away and take it. So we just need to like do better technologies, develop the technology that we have now, keep pushing it forward so that the consumer is like, well, this is undeniable. This is so much better than stereo, and I'm so glad stereo is done now, and we can like live in immersive audio.
Go down the line, and each of you, just in a couple words, just describe what this technology is like, what Sony 360 reality audio is like for you, just briefly, like your first thought that comes to your mind.
I mean, I think we mentioned it a little bit, but like the first experience that I had going to immersive was like black and white TV to like 3D, not even color, but like going to like a 3D, experience. It's that you're literally in the thing. So.
Well, I think with immersive technology like 360, only one word: sky's the limit. I mean, two words actually. Sky's the limit. I did a mix that you can actually listen to over there, literally on headphones, on a train from Frankfurt to Zurich, and it's playing up there, and it translated amazingly, and that was using the MV1 headphones from Sony. So check it out, because I mean, they translate well and they sound good. And to answer your question, literally with this technology, sky is the limit. Go for it. Don't hold it back. No holding back.
Yeah, I totally agree with the sky being the limit. Like it's super freeing to get to like work on a mix and immersive. You get to put everything where you want it to go. Like you don't have to worry about like the layering of things so much as you would with like a stereo mix. In the headphones, when I first heard like the Sony binaural render, oh my god, I was blown away. It really feels like you're sitting in a room. Like I feel pretty comfortable about sitting in like working on a mix primarily in headphones, and then I don't have to worry constantly about how it's going to translate to a room. The translation's really good, and it's amazing. It really is freeing in a lot of different ways.
I think for me, I would say it's elevation, insulation, and isolation. And what I mean by that is when I first sat and got to listen to a mix of a song of mine in 360, like my experience was elevated to a whole new level. And then the insulation and isolation, like it brought me closer to the music, right? It's just you and the music. And even though I was in a room full of people surrounding me, like you feel like it's just you and the music. And so I think experientially for those who mix it, right? And the creators who create it, I think that, for both the artists and for the consumer, it's gonna change the game.
For me, I would say it's innovative. I think it gave me a different perspective on how music can be created and developed. Um, in regards to the mix itself, it helps to be able to see things because I have synesthesia. So when I make songs, I'm seeing different colors, and so to be able to put like a face to that is very cool for me to be able to like move those sounds around. And then on top of that, I think it's also challenging in a positive way because it allows you to develop different habits in terms of mixing things. And so, for example, if you have a stereo mix, usually you probably have like 30 different mixes before the song is actually finished. With this, you probably can limit that a little more because each sound has its own individual moment within the mix. So you don't have to worry about things being too plugged up or too clogged sonically. There's space for everything to fit individually.
How does your synesthesia translate to live performing when you're out there playing? I'm a big fan of the English beat. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Anyone that big fans of the English beat, touring with them, being with Dave. Talk about bringing your skills to that.
Synesthesia is interesting for me. So whenever I close my eyes, I see different colors as well with any sound that I'm hearing. And so when I'm playing drums, the different tonalities of specifically the drums gives me a different color. So the first time will give me a blue, the second time will give me a yellow, and the floor time will give me a red. The cymbals are a bright red, like a flash when you hit them. So it's different in that regard for me because when you take that and put that into a studio setting, the colors change based on the mix that you're giving because the tonality of each drum can be EQ'd a certain way to give it a softer, fluffy feel or a harder hit. So it kind of varies, but for me, it's very detail oriented.
Cool, very cool. I think anyone add anything, or we're going to open this up to some questions. Great. Who has any questions? Anyone think of anything good to ask this esteemed panel? Sure. Pass my mic around.
So, Charles, I got a question for you. So now that we're, for the past few years, we started to see a whole shift in church culture, like as far as production and all that kind of stuff. How soon do you think we'll start seeing immersive audio being incorporated within sanctuaries, and how do you think people will receive that?
That's a good question. I think two things. I think that it always depends on the staff. The staff team and just like, everybody who's here and those who have been able to connect with, the products with Sony. I think contingent upon the people who are exposed, they will bring that to their churches or to their, so like Rodney East, who was just here, who was produced for whoever you want to name, Uncle Charlie, behind all the R. Kelly stuff, just so many other people. He may take this to his dad's church. and contingent upon where the technology is and how it can be integrated into that kind of setting, I think it'll all depend on the staff team.
Very good. Anybody have another question? Anything at all for this panel? Over here.
I'm curious about in the learning curve, how much have you totally messed up? Like when you listen back and it feels, how much can you be disoriented by the experience of mixing in this way?
At first, I was my own worst enemy. Yeah, you can get completely disoriented because you start having too much fun. So I think like most of these guys said, it's just keeping perspective, start with a good bed or a good start, and then build around. And then after that, sky's the limit. But as far as technological learning curve, there really hasn't been much. The software is very easy to use. So I think it's pretty much plug and play, and you're up and running. Like she said, you can read the software. They have a bunch of tutorials on YouTube. And you just look at that and immediately get up and running. I was up and running literally, I think, within half an hour of having the system in my hands. I was up and running. So I think it should be fairly easy.
Anybody have anything? You had something to add?
There we go. Just a question. How do you guys feel that DSPs are catching up with this technology, and how do you think that's how's that looking moving forward?
Yeah, I wish I could speak to the DSPs. I think that's above my pay grade. I mean, Atmos is on Apple Music, Amazon Tidal, Sony's on Amazon and Tidal, and Spotify is the rogue player. They're not really giving hi-fi audio even, let alone immersive. But we're hoping that's going to change, and they'll, get with the times to offer immersive audio because, as you'll see, like there's, sound bars, cars, so many like TV manufacturers putting like Atmos into their thing. So like immersive audio, even like the Sony 360 formats, like has a cool thing that Atmos doesn't have, which is like you can program objects to be user controllable. So you can have a feature on a track that you can mute or like a different language. You can mute the guitars if you want to on a mix, like on the user side of things. So I think. Yeah, hopefully the DSPs will catch on and there'll be more of this. But again, this is above my kind of pay grade to say when or how it will happen.
Any of you have any current projects that exemplify everything you've been talking about, or something in the works you want to make sure people look out for?
I mean, the latest project I have released is the latest Black Pumas album, which is a really good album. You guys should check that out if you haven't heard it.
I have an independent artist I'm launching on my own record label. So I'm going to be putting her out. Her name is NECA, and I'm going to mix it in 360. Plus, I'm doing a couple of other independent records where we're definitely going to go in that direction. So yeah, we're hoping to see where this goes. I hope, like you said, DSP catch on.
I'm really excited about the tape to immersive audio project that I've been engineering, mixing. You can find it on Instagram at Dear Diary Exhibit. We're still like in the beginning phases of that, but hopefully we'll be having that displayed in art galleries in LA, New York, and Nashville. So follow us on Instagram.
I'm working on an album with an artist named Breezy. The album should be out sometime this summer. Stay tuned for it. It's going to be mixed in immersive audio as well as stereo.
I did a remake of Never Knew Love Like This Before with Stephanie Mills. She's on it. It was the song of the year last year on Billboard, and that is in Atmos, but it's going to be in immersive. And I have a birthday record that just got cleared today by Earth, Wind, and Fire that I'm dropping soon, now that that's cleared, and that was mixed by Kevin and Ryan. That's immersive 360, and look for that. It's called It's My Birthday Month.
All you guys are amazing. This is all really exciting stuff. Extremely talented, artistic, creative individuals, and we all look forward to hearing all that stuff. And thanks for being part of this panel and using this great technology and kind of letting everyone know why it's so special in the future. Thank you, everybody.